Excellence in our industry comes from quality teams creating quality products. In an industry that's constantly evolving, it's your unwavering grit, determination, and passion that drives innovation and elevates standards to new heights. As brewers ourselves, we know what that passion looks like. It's the drive to create something exceptional, fueled by dedication and love for the craft. As a stainless steel equipment manufacturer for over 10 years, ABS Commercial provides a full consultative approach to our customers, from consultation and design to installation and ongoing care and maintenance. Whether you're in planning, just getting started, or looking to expand, we're here to support your growth and your success. Thank you for choosing ABS Commercial as your trusted partner.
Well, hello. Hi, everyone, and welcome to your favorite topic, HR things. That is sarcasm. Anyways, I am Jessica Hart, and I'm here to talk to you about transforming your brewery stuff from compliance to strategic advantage. And you're like, what the heck does that mean? So, hello, I'm the speaker. I talk about stuff in breweries and wineries. Alcohol and the industry is my jam, especially when we throw hospitality into the mix. You can find me where employees wear multiple hats. So I know how it goes, and we'll jump into my resume here in a second because you're like, well, why am I listening to her? But I know how it goes when you're in a brewery and you've got the GM that's also HR, that's also handling procurement to have the food in the kitchen, all the things. I know how that goes. And so I also know that realistically, HR is a part of your job. It's not your whole job. And realistically, it just doesn't make sense for it to be your whole job because it just doesn't. So with that said, in the past, in case you're wondering, this is going to be a little bit of a nugget on top of our last conversation, which was practical HR back in July 17th. That's that little screenshot. Okay. You can find that on the Craft Beer Professionals YouTube or Spotify and go listen to that in case you're curious about that piece. I've also talked since we've chatted about some stuff with taproom expertise, and I will see you all in San Diego. So I wanted to make sure that I gave you that plug. Okay, so why am I talking and who is this HR person in the industry? So a couple things on my resume, because sometimes that's important to people. If you're like, hey, why is she getting like an hour of my life? I have 2 formal degrees. I have an undergraduate degree in HR and organizational behavior, and I have a master's degree in business administration. I have 1 formal certificate in HR from a university out here in California. Yes, I am located on the West Coast. And outside of that, I've been in business for a year. Some corporate background stuff for you to know is I was with Target for a long time doing their HR and mass expansion, mass training, mass hire, mass fire, right? Seasonal staffing, that whole space. I was also with Heineken when Heineken bought the Lagunitas Brewing Company and did a lot of post-merger M&A with them across the whole U.S. with the regional sales team, with all of our locations. We had 5 at the time. And all of that type of stuff. And then one of my first clients out of the gate was Mazzetta. So I share that with you because I get CPG, I get Bev Alc, I get it a little bit. Okay. But outside of that, I've been published in a couple different things, helping out the industry. But the coolest thing ever is this screenshot here today, which is from Mr. Tony Amaral, who is the head of sales at Firestone Walker. And it happened 3 days ago. So out of, the publications and stuff, you can go to my website if you're interested in what I've been quoted at for Brewing Industry Guide. But this is something that's dear to me. So I was excited to see that out there. Okay, now enough about me. What are we talking about with you? So jumping into the overview. Now, I want to make sure we're talking the same jargon because I think that what ends up happening in HR space and just in business spaces, it's like what means something on the West Coast could mean something different on the East Coast. You've got regional stuff. And also this isn't jargon that a lot of people use day in and day out like I do. And so I want to make sure that we're all talking about the same stuff. So we're going to go into that a little bit first. I'm going to talk to you about some stuff that's changed or changing so that you can be strategic in knowing what's coming down the pipe. With that, we'll talk with some real life examples. And I want you, if you hear anything to me right now, don't go crazy trying to catch up to these things. If you get aha moments from me from this video and you have no idea that they even existed or applied to you, it's okay, deep breath, and we'll talk about why. Do not rush. to do anything crazy to try and fix anything if you think something needs to be fixed. All right, we're going to go over a sample timeline that I give everyone over the next 6 months because we've got a lot of things going on. And if we have time, we'll go into Q&A. I'm going to jump over to the comments real quick, and it looks like we're set. But if there's anything that you, if you're listening live right now, are really curious about, even if it's a real life thing going on, right? You can throw it in the comments. And if it makes sense when we're in the middle of the presentation that I can reference and go back to your comment and chat, we totally will chat live. But I'll try and do my best to stay live and stay current on that space. If not, there's a comment and a where to find me type slide at the end of this. So jumping in, that HR dictionary that we talked about. Now, the US is big, guys. And what I mean by that, it's big. It's not just, miles and miles and miles and miles apart. And it takes you like 6.5 hours to fly from one side of, the coast to the other side. Now, I say that because when we're talking about HR stuff, we have compliance and the check the box activity stuff that happens at the federal level. So what I mean by that is the stuff that applies to all of us. Okay. Then you've got the state stuff, just like it sounds, state specific stuff and compliance that applies to you if your business operates in that state. Then you've got city or municipality laws that come into play and compliance based off of, again, you named it, where the city is that your business operates. So it's like a drill down. And what gets a lot of people either nervous, on a hiccup, unaware, is that you have to play in all of them. Just because you hit the federal one doesn't mean you hit the state or the city one. Okay. So we have to figure out how those all triangulate and what area we want to play in. Now, with that, you'll also hear me say things like in theory, and I know it gets super annoying to say in theory or hearing it depends when you call an attorney, right? Or anything like that. And the reason why I say that is because when I'm talking to this group here, I can't see where you guys are located, to be honest. Like, I can't see if you're in Ohio. I can't see if you're in Tennessee. I don't know who's on the call if they're from Washington. And I say it like that because that's where in theory or it depends comes into play, because of the state and the city municipality stuff. So I will do my best to either answer a question right on the spot or give you a spot to look so that you can try and dial it in for yourself. Because in theory, right, we're all in compliance in all the things. And now strategic risk is what we're going to talk about more specifically today. And I'll give you some examples as we go on. But strategic risk is basically knowing those guardrails, knowing that you check the box on the things that you have to, and then also knowing the reality of what goes on. I'll say it over and over and over again, guys. Like, people that write laws probably haven't been a W-2 employee or a business owner, or even on salary, right, for a pretty long time. And I say that because a lot of times the intent behind whatever is compliant or being made to be in compliance, right, or a law or whatever, the intent can be really great. And then what ends up happening kind of wrecks your world. Candidly, it does. So we're going to talk about what those things are a little bit further. Now, before we jump into some of these things, I want to make sure that we're all understanding and taking a flashback. So if you remember back in 2011, there was this interesting thing between Sam Adams and Anchorsteam. And what ended up happening is that there was an employee that got hired by Anchorsteam. And Sam Adams went after the employee. They didn't go after Anchorsteam. They went after the employee because they said, hey, employee, based on our employment agreement that you signed in 2006, which, what is that, quick math, 5 years before, you're not allowed to go and work for a competitor based on these criteria. Now, that's what's called a non-compete that we're going to fast forward to that here in a second. That's what's called a non-compete that is and isn't legal in many states and is getting challenged at the federal level. So I bring that up because this is an example of something that has hit our industry a long time ago, pretty good flashback, but I'm trying to give you real life examples of things that happen at the federal level that impact your employee experience and impact your business today. AKA some of you, if you have a non-disclosure agreement, there are some states out there that you had to notify people to say that that didn't non-disclosure or employment agreement doesn't exist anymore or non-compete. Okay. So Let's talk about it a little bit. What's changed? Let's talk about stuff at the federal level because it is an election year and things are going to continue to change. I want to talk to you about some things that are trending. We'll go into some state stuff, but unless I see, if people want to start putting what state they're in the comments, that would be great because then I can tailor it to you if I can. And then we'll talk about some potential things to have on your horizon. So, jumping in here. It just froze on me. Now we're good. All right. So at a quick glance, I want to give you guys some examples of those same kind of jargon topics that we are talking about. So when we're talking about federal compliance, FTC is a Federal Trade Commission. You can give that a Google and you can see that they were talking about eliminating non-competes overall throughout the whole country. They do have the authority that they can do that. Some states got mad and they've been able to say, hey, Ken, welcome from Colorado. They've been able to say, hey, we don't like that idea. So state, we're going to sue the Fed because they're going to say that the FTC is overreaching. Now, that's failed in multiple different spaces, and you can give that a Google to see if your state is the one going after it. Off the top of my head, I remember Texas and Pennsylvania were having fun in that lawsuit. Now, specifically when it comes to non-competes, right? So your state might have already said, squash that, we're not touching non-competes anymore, and you could have already been in have to send that notice out that said non-competes don't work anymore. AKA California and some others already had that go in January before the FTC came out and did those things. Now, why I say that is because also we've got the Department of Labor. Their overtime thresholds have been proposed to change. And what that means for you guys is that depending on what state you're in, you have to make sure that people are making a certain amount of wages if they're not getting overtime. And so if you have people that are salary under that amount, you're now not in compliance with the Fed on how much you're supposed to be paying these people for their salaried amount. That leads to misclassification, and that leads to wage and hour compliance at the state, federal, and most likely city level. That is not to scare you. That is just a reality. All right. And if I'm saying jargon and you don't get it, please throw it in the comments because we might as well speak the same language while I'm here and have this be a really good dialogue. Now, with that, there's also chat about what is an independent contractor. At the federal level, they're saying things like, hey, you're classifying real employees as independent contractors because it keeps your workers' comp down. It keeps your amount of headcount down from, having to offer them benefits. There's all sorts of reasons why someone hires an independent contractor or 1099. Okay. But the businesses and the basically federal people are saying, hey, you're trying to skirt around payroll taxes maybe or unemployment or whatever. All right. So there's a lot of trending talk about misclassification of independent contractors. And then there's the lovely NLRB stuff, the National Labor Relations Board, basically coming in and saying, hey, you can't monitor social media. You can't monitor how people talk about their working environments because if you're saying, oh, they can't talk about their working conditions on social media, you're basically making it so that they can't unionize because they should be able to talk about their working conditions. Again, if this is all new to you, deep breath. You're not going to go after all of this at one time. This is just a heads up of things that are trending and things that you should know about so that you can move from compliance, check the box, to strategy. On the state side, we've got a lot of interesting stuff. Colorado for you, Ken, right? That family leave, FAMLI leave in Colorado, doesn't matter what size your business is. You have to be paying into this Family Leave Act. Type of thing. So basically saying like, hey, if someone goes out on leave on maternity or their own personal medical condition or what have you, there's a little bit of money that goes to that individual. Outside of that, bereavement laws in California changed. Electronic monitoring, if you're monitoring employees in New York, that's something new that already changed. Wage theft enforcement in Florida, specifically around hospitality, tap rooms, tasting rooms, anyone with a tip, that is trending in Florida. And this is all real state compliance stuff that already went through. And then North Carolina said you have to be an E-Verify company. All right. E-Verify, there are some states out there that are required to do it. What that means is you hire someone and I say, hey, great. Thank you so much for coming. Please give me some documents that show me that you can work here. And there's a document that, has all the options. But a quick summary means that person shows up on their first day. And within the first 3 days, 72 hours of their first day, You as a business owner look at their documents, type their documents into E-Verify, which is a website, and the website spits it back and says, yep, those documents are real. You get to employ this person. Congratulations. Sometimes it comes back and says, oh, we need a little bit more time. And then you still have the employee working, right? Because that's how it works. Then it can come back as a rejection. They have to go back to Social Security office or whatever. I'll spare you all the details. But essentially, North Carolina said, nope, we're E-Verifying everybody. Okay. So these are just, again, guardrails or lanes, whatever word you want to use, of different compliance things that come based on your state. Now, there are states out there that you can do E-Verify if you want to. There are some states out there that you have to do it. And then there are some states that you don't have to do it. So jumping into city stuff, a lot of cities have been coming out with fair work week scheduling or predictive pay type laws and compliance. What that means is that you got to write a schedule and keep it. And then if you change it in a certain amount of time, you're out of compliance with that and you can owe money to the employee or basically like minimum reporting pay if you don't, change it in a certain amount of time. They could still get those hours because they thought that they were going to work. That's all over the place, different cities, so we won't cover that too much in detail here. Then we got tipped minimum wages, which is also a hot topic. And a lot of states that do the tipped minimum wage, that's hey, I can pay you down here. The feds say I need to pay you here. Your tips make up the money. And I, as a business owner, only budget down here. So then they have to claim the tips so that you make the minimum wage and they move on. Paid sick leave and heat protection in a lot of states has also been trending. Now, again, I'm talking in theory because all of this jumble and you probably like glazed over as you're hearing me talk about all this stuff, right? You're like, oh God, why did I even jump into this chat? Is because all of this is, again, in theory. So what you need to do is just write down, hey, how many employees do I have? I'm talking headcount, names, and payroll, guys. I'm not talking FTE or full-time equivalents. No, anyone in payroll. You just need to look at that summary, okay? And then you need to go, where am I working? Are they all on site in one city and state? Okay, cool. That's easier. That's all you need to know. And then you can see what applies to you based off of your business. Now, talking again about that strategic risk, we got to know where the players are in the game. And some HR people won't say this out loud, but I will. The realistic capability of some of these agencies or organizations coming to audit you for those things. I just said that on the record, but that's the reality, okay? Sometimes they don't have the bandwidth to go after these things. Now, what does this mean for you? Let's talk about my chat a little bit. I'll briefly look at it from when we chatted in July, okay? That practical HR in the breweries. We're going to talk about that quick matrix just for people that might be jumping on for the first time and haven't watched that video yet. And then we're going to talk about moving towards strategy. Again, this is a building block for that prior conversation. So if you are interested in getting to know more of it, just go stream it on their YouTube or Spotify, okay? And then we're going to talk about some other people's oops because it's always easier to learn from someone else's oops than making our own, all right? So first thing, back in July when we all chatted and we met and this, we had the practical conversation, I basically talked to you guys about 3 ingredients for your business and for your brewery. People, policy, procedure. Boom. Very simple because we want to make sure that when we're translating our business and our liquid and our brand, we think of it very easy in these 3 buckets so that HR comes to life in these capabilities and capacities. You're like, oh boy, what does that mean? Here's a fun matrix for you. So what it looks like is if your team is back of house or front of house, right? On off premise sales maybe, or remote, just think of it as where they do their work. And then you'll see here that, what does it mean to have people? People could be your tap room. It could be your GM, people doing tours, right? For front of house. We'd want to have policies around hygiene, brand, behavior, right? Compliance. Do you live and work in a state that says, hey, you need to have serve safe. You need to have responsible beverage serving training, all of that, right? And then procedure is, what do we do in the front of house and how do we tell people to work and behave in the front of house that brings our liquid to life to then bring in more sales, right? That's where HR comes to life in the front of house space. And so that was just a quick metrics. Again, Just go check out that video on YouTube that they already have, and this will all make more sense. But jumping into the playbook and why we're all here. Now, we cannot change the playbook, okay? We will have the playbook change for us. I know that is really frustrating. As an entrepreneur and a business owner or someone that really cares, right? It sucks when you're voluntold that things change. I can't sugarcoat that. But what I can say is that the real playbook for your success in moving your people into a strategic advantage and bringing that liquid to life comes from knowing these players in the game and then knowing how and why it impacts you. Because I guarantee you, nothing sucks more than when your employee comes to you and informs you that their pay was wrong, or you're not giving them the right amount of sick time, or you didn't give them their schedule on time, or you're right. And you're like, oh my God. And you're hearing me say this and you guys are rolling your eyes like, oh, this has happened to me. And you're right. It's so annoying. I get it. But we have to know, how do we put systems and processes in place so that you don't have to talk about this again? Right. And then if we minimize the amount of times that conversation happens, you guys get to thrive and run and do the things that you actually want to do. It's a win-win every direction that we go. Okay. So jumping into that, wow, I got a lot of words on this page. Jumping into this is I want to talk about a couple real life scenarios that I've had go through with some clients in the beer industry, right? One of which is workers' comp. We have to have it, right? It's just a thing. We got to have it as an expense on our business. Now, when we say that we have to have it, you can hear that and go, yep, we pay that insurance and we hope that no one files with OSHA and we call it a day, right? What it also means is knowing that your workers' comp insurance goes up and down based on your payroll. So a lot of people forget about that, is that the amount of people that you have on payroll and what they're paid is what impacts your workers' comp money, right? How much money you need to budget for that piece. So when you're looking at that, right, you're probably in annual planning right now, looking at what you're going to do for 2025. You need to forecast out your head count with the salaries associated, probably a pay band in there, and then assume what you're going to pay that person. Maybe you've got a vacancy rate in there. You know, maybe you're not staffing in January, maybe you're staffing in March. I don't know. But I say that because we need to know, and you need to know, that when it goes up, workers' comp goes up. When it goes down, it goes down. So some options that you have, right? And this is where we get into strategy. We check the box. We have workers' comp. Now, how do we want it to work for us? Now, one of the things that you can do is you can say, hey, workers' comp person, this is not on you. Okay. I'm asking you to delegate it. I'm asking you to ask your brokers to do things for you. Okay. You're going to say, hey, broker, we've got workers' comp with you. We're paying you to do this stuff. I want you to audit us once a year. What I mean by that is they'll ask for your payroll records, and they will tell you what you should be paying for workers' comp. And there's, a fancy word like back pay or arrears or whatever you want to call it. But basically, it's like a look back for a year. And then they'll ask you, hey, you hired, you added headcount. We didn't have this on the forecast, so you need to pay more. That's a reality. Another option is you can say, hey, I don't like the idea of looking back a year. I would much rather have this done every single month. Now, most workers' comp places are going to say, hey, we'll do it once a year for you just to remain in compliance, keep good graces, and also they want to get their money. This option where you do it monthly allows you to always pay, in theory, right? Always pay what you should. I don't usually recommend this option to people, guys. I'm just going to be obvious and honest about it, is that if you're measuring it once a month, that's a lot of work on you as the business owner. And it just doesn't need to happen, right? Like if you can outsource that and do it once a year, that would be great. I also want to say that if you're doing it once a month, you should only do it once a month if you're in a very, very, very seasonal business. I'm talking you work in Montana and you guys are only open for the summer. And then the blizzard comes in and we shut our doors. That's a real restaurant that I know, right? Or you are in a tourist destination that's only for the summer, right? There are plenty of reasons why you would only want to measure it for the months that you're open, as opposed to the months that you're closed for the season. Okay. But the reality is, and what I talk to people about, and I want you to hear me on regarding being strategic with workers' comp, is that your workers' comp companies give you a portal, or should give you a portal that has safety trainings in there. They should have lockout, tagout trainings in there if you're working with tanks, right? They should have working from heights training in there. They should have slip and fall. They should have forklift training and certification, right? This is all in a software system that they should already give you access to. You should not be reinventing the wheel to be in compliance with all these OSHA things, right? Or your state OSHA things. Now, what also is important to know about workers' comp is you can and should ask your broker to come on site and help you with doing your forklift training and staying on that certification. A lot of people don't realize that that is an option, and the brokers that want to keep their business will come out for you. So I want to make sure that you know that, and it's not an additional cost. You should not be paying an additional cost for that. That's already what they get paid. Okay. Another thing I want to talk through. We talked a little bit about tipped minimum wage, and I say it because it is such a topic. Like, this is not a discussion on if you do or don't like tipping people. This is not a conversation on what your thoughts are, right, about tipping. This is the functionality of being a business that takes the tipped minimum wage. Now, if you're on this call and you're like, what the heck, Jessica, are you talking about? Let's take a step back. Tipped minimum wage, I talked about it a little bit earlier, but tipped minimum wage is when you, as a business, decide to take advantage of what's happening on your city or state level that says that you can have a tipped minimum wage. There are many states and cities out there that are like, absolutely not, we don't do tipped minimum wage. So don't hear this and go, ooh, I'm going to go change things right away. Absolutely not. Okay. But tipped minimum wage means, so for example, like Tennessee, right? Tennessee, you can pay people $2.13 an hour, amongst other states, right? And that is how you, on an annual planning perspective, budget for your hourly rate. So you can budget, hey, I need this many people to work this many shifts on this many days, multiply it out, right? And you can have an annualized plan on your personnel expenses. You can take that number, say what your workers' comp is going to be, blah, blah, blah. Okay. What I'm saying about tipped minimum wage is that you can budget for the tipped minimum wage in states that allow it. Then you have to have your team claim their tips, right, to bring you up to the federal minimum wage, because you need to cut a check to them here, not here. Okay. So that's the federal thing. Now, if you have a state minimum wage, you got a city minimum wage. Yep. You got to pay up here. Okay. So all that to say is, when I'm talking about having a business that decides to pay the tipped minimum wage, you got to have processes that work in your favor, because if not, you're going to waste all of your time trying to figure out that gap, and it's going to waste your time and put you in wage and hour compliance issues. It's just not worth it. Okay. Now, what that really means is that from your business standpoint, you're budgeting that you're going to spend right around here, right? That tipped minimum wage amount. That doesn't usually happen if process and procedure aren't set up correctly. So that's why we're going to talk through some of these options, right? You might be a business that says, hey, we pay the tip minimum wage. Somewhere between now and payroll, team members claim some tips. And we're like, cool, move on. You don't know if it's cash. You don't know if it's credit card, whatever. A lot of systems now make you report credit card tips right through your POS, but just bear with me on a second. Another one can say, we just let them do it if they want to. Another one can be that employees don't claim their tips because they know that you got to make up that money anyways, right? So they're going to walk with all the cash, not claim it correctly in the POS. You're going to have to do the money on the back end to get it all organized correctly. And, you might not make it by the payroll cutoff, and now you're paying them at that minimum wage instead, and then trying to take money from them in the future. It's just a mess. So another option is knowing that when you do a tipped minimum wage, you're passing that expense, right? That gap we talked about, you're passing that expense to the customer. So you have a policy that requires team members to report it so that you stay in your budget. That's also a decision where HR and process, right, needs to be with your GM and your owner, because if you don't like how that feels when I say that, right, passing your business expense, your customer, your personnel expense to the customer, that doesn't feel like it aligns with the liquid or the brand that you're trying to portray. You need to know that that's what's happening, right, on the people perspective. We talked a little bit about forklifts earlier, about workers' comp, but your team members probably drive forklifts. No one's lifting a bunch of pony kegs around. No one's lifting a bunch of, full kegs around, especially if you're doing like self-distribution or something like that. You're going to use the forks to get it into a car, or at least a hand truck, right? To get it out to the car, and then team lift, I hope, these giant kegs, because they're heavy. Now, a lot of times you need a certification, right? To operate heavy machinery. You've got to have a certification registered with OSHA or whoever. And so I get it that this is an absolute nightmare. Trust me, I get it. Where you're like, when is the forklift certification up? Who can train who, and who's a train the trainer, and blah 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 blah. Okay, just lean into it. Let's get to the option. You guys, your workers' comp broker can do this for you. Okay, you can have your workers' comp broker come on site and help you with these things. It's a reality. And so I think a lot of times we just have workers' comp or these brokers that support our business, but then we don't see them as extensions of our brand and of our business and of our operation, and we drop it, right? Like, you're already paying for these things. So allow these partnerships that you already have set up to work for you. You might hire people, okay? You know that when you hire people, there's a whole bunch of forms that you got to fill out. Being strategic knows that being strategic, you guys, in hiring is going, hey, am I an E-Verify employer or not? Being strategic in hiring is, hey, I know that my payroll system is a per employee per month, right? They call it PEPM, per employee per month. And I know that there's no rounding and there is no proration when you bring an employee on. So I know that I can't hire someone on the 31st of the month because I'm going to get billed for them being on payroll for the full month. I might as well just push the date to the 1st, right? It's being strategic about these costs, because we all know that times are tough. We all know that margins are tight. We all know that cost and budgeting is tight. So that's where you need to make sure that your procedure in hiring is not working against you, because, man, if you hired a bunch of people on the 31st, and then you're just paying a bunch, right? Seasonal staffing, I'm looking at like May through August in a tap room. You're going to spend a lot of money for no reason, just because that's what your PEPM says, what your payroll system says. So back to hiring people. If you're a business that is in an E-Verify state, you don't got wiggle room in this one, okay? If you're in a company or a business that is not in an E-Verify state, you can have wiggle room in this one. What I mean by that is that you have someone show up. You go, hey, we got to hire you. We'll fill out some paperwork, and we submit it to the state or to the government. That comes back, says, yep, you can work, and they move on. If you don't do E-Verify, how are they going to know? This is where I'm like, I can't believe I'm saying this while I'm on a recording, but this is reality. How are they going to know, right? If someone comes in and audits you for OSHA, it's not because they knew that your forklift certifications were wrong, okay? It's because someone was mad. Some employee was pissed. If you're getting audited for an I-9, it's not because they're like, oh, that person isn't allowed to work in the U.S. It's because someone was mad and turned you in for something, okay? Strategic HR is knowing when these things will happen and deciding, as you as the business owner, if that is a risk you're willing to take or not. Some people are like, absolutely not. I don't want to take any of these risks. Fair. Some people go 80 on the freeway. All right. Now, to take the analogy a little bit further, is that we all know that speeding on the freeway versus speeding in a school zone is vastly different. Talking about your business and HR and all of these things, and knowing, I guess, where the sirens are, right? Where the whoop whoop comes in. You don't want the ticket in the school zone. We all know that, regardless of where you live. Okay. So some other things to think about: your POS, your softwares, your systems. If they're not set up correctly, it's failing you. It does not matter that the system didn't do the things. Okay. It matters that you didn't do the things. There are plenty, and you can Google this, lawsuits versus ADP and Gusto and all sorts of things that they won because employers tried to sue them to say, hey, you didn't pay people correctly. You're my payroll provider. And they go, no, we just said that we would pay people based off of what you tell us to pay them, not the other way around. And so, again, the accountability and ownership goes on you. With that said, when you try and Google things and find some lawsuits and stuff, you'll see some smaller breweries, right? You'll see some tap rooms. You won't see the big guys. And we talked about this in July. And that's because they have arbitration agreements set up, so it keeps it all hush-hush and we don't learn from them. But I guarantee those things are happening. Now, with that, I want you to make sure that if you're choosing a different POS or you're choosing to write a schedule somewhere, maybe you're using Homebase connects to Gusto, blah, blah, blah. Maybe you're using 7 Shifts. Maybe, you're using ADP or another provider like Paylocity. It's not about which one you're using. It's, was it set up correctly? And is it set up correctly now so that you continue to pay people? All right. Same thing with tip reporting and efficiency, right? If those two things connect, that makes your life a lot easier. Scheduling historic to sales. When I had a Square update, that was awesome because we could punch in, punch out on Square. We could see labor, and we could see where we need to schedule people and have the right shifts, right? And you could see tickets for back of house and all sorts of stuff. But you want those systems to talk together so that you're not touching it multiple times. Brokers, like I said, you got to leverage them. You're already paying for them. They are getting a cut of the fee that you are paying for workers' comp, for your broker stuff, okay? You've got to put them to work. They don't get to just keep collecting their check because you have to have them, right? If you're an ACA requirement, right, where you have 100 plus employees, or you're a joint employer and you have multiple breweries and tap rooms, and boom, all of a sudden you're at 100 employees, even though they're all under different brands, but you own a piece of all that. Yes, you have to have medical insurance, right? Like those are brokers that you need to have set up, and they can come on site. They should be coming on site. They should be doing some things to help you out and be an extension of your leadership team. You're paying them to do that. All right. And the other thing is make new friends. Get curious about the things that you don't know, and also know that you can always bring in people to help you audit what you got going on or set stuff up. Okay. Refer to experts that are not in your lane, because the reality is like some people nerd out and go deep, right, on HR stuff, right? Myself. Some people go really deep on hops and brewing and quality. Our brains are only so big. we can only be experts at so many things. So kind of ask for help and tag in the team when you need it. This is where I wanted to take a second and chat about not going crazy. I've said a lot of stuff. You might be like, oh my God, I just completely went over my head. She talks too fast. This is a lot of stuff, but it's not going to happen to me, right? Whatever it is. I'm not here to lead with fear. I'm here to lead with education. And so I want to leave you with this: is I don't want you to go crazy. I don't want you to start going on ChatGPT and saying, my business is this size and we're located here. What laws do I need to do? Right? Like, I don't want you to start giving yourself madness. What I want you to know is that you have plenty of time to figure it out. This is a great time to figure it out. I'm not going to lie. And here's why. Next month, we're going to have an election. Whoever gets voted in, we all know there's going to be a new president. We all know that. We can all agree on that. Next up, we know that presidents get to appoint 11 different heads of different departments that then influence employees in their life cycles across the whole country. The same thing is happening in different states and city municipalities and stuff like that. But what's great right now is, candidly, no one has time to come audit you. Like this does not need to be a thing, right? They're all busy doing political stuff. So this is a great opportunity for you to go, hey, when's the last time we updated our handbook? Let's take an audit of like what people are getting paid versus minimum wage stuff. Let's look at job descriptions and should we tweak those? Do we have non-competes and we should have told people that they don't exist anymore? You can take a holistic audit and use this time to do that. And that leads me to my specific timeline, right? This is a sample timeline for you if you're a business owner or GM, right? Someone curious about opening a business. This will happen every 4 years too. This is very, very cyclical, okay? So I would say in November, start looking at your handbook. Think about who are your resources to get that going and how is that resource going to change? Because I can't stand when people go and pay some lawyer or someone to write them a handbook in November and it changes by March. And then they want to tell them that they need to pay again for an amendment. Okay, that's weird. But the reality is that it is guaranteed to change by next year. So I don't want you to go spend money right now. I don't. Doesn't make sense. With that too in December, if you realize that you've got people misclassified, right? Hot topic. You've got people underpaid. Your tips are going nuts. Just figure out how you want to create a packet, right? Of basically onboarding everyone new again. You can do that fresh in January. And then when it comes to January, you launch like, hey, welcome to the new year. By the way, we're cleaning some stuff up. Here's a new handbook. Here's an offer letter. And it doesn't throw off any red flags with your team that things were broken or needed to be cleaned up or you thought they were broken in the past. Then in February, right, you're going to make friends. You're going to see what changes. You don't need to keep up with all the things. And in March, you can revise that handbook. You can roll things out and go, hey, by the way, remember that handbook that we did in January? Oh, well, some things have changed at the federal level. Look at me. I'm an employer that knows these things. And boom, I'm going to make some changes. Now, again, I know that this is a lot of words, a lot of things, but I want you to think of it as literally one elephant at a time. This is not this doesn't need to be super serious right now. It does later. This is just something for you to think about how do you move things into a strategic space so you're not feeling the like, what is she talking about, right? Pressure right now. Now, of course, it messed up the slide, but that's fine. I do not usually put my cell phone number out there. That's literally my cell. That is not a Google number. So I do want to give that out to you in case you want to shoot me a text or have any questions. That is my website. And I will put up the comments for a second here. Figure you guys didn't need me to chat for an hour about HR stuff. You'd glaze over anyways. And so if you're still here with me or if you're catching the recording, thank you so much for listening so far. If you have any specific questions here in the comments, please do so. And outside of that, I think I'm going to let you guys go and have a good rest of your day. I hope with these extra couple minutes, you can go get some steps in before our next speaker, okay? And I will leave you with this because it is one of my favorite quotes of all time. I also think it's fun because we did talk about how the political landscape is changing, just to kind of keep it with another politician. Why not? Good old Abe, okay? I'm a firm believer in the people. If given the truth, they can be depended upon to meet any national crisis. The great point is to bring them together, right? The real facts and beer. Boom. All right. Well, this has been a joy, guys. I will be in San Diego, and I would love to cheers you in person if any of you are heading out that direction. And I am going to jump off because I'm not seeing any comments. All right. Have fun with the recording. Again, you can catch my practical HR conversation on their YouTube and Spotify for craft beer professionals. Thanks so much and have a great rest of your day. Bye.